So we live in a Rube Goldberg world. We live in a world where one thing can serendipitously lead to another in magical and unexpected ways. And today I am so excited to introduce our guest. We have Jennifer George, who is the CCO of the Rube Goldberg Institute. And CCO in this case means Chief Creative Officer. Not only is she the Chief Creative Officer, she's also the DNA of the Institute because she happens to be Rube Goldberg's granddaughter. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diane.
So I am so happy to have you with us. I discovered Rube Goldberg when I was working at a children's museum. We happened to have this incredible contraption in the front lobby that was inspired by his work. And I would watch these children, literally, you couldn't get them out of the front lobby. And we had 3 floors of fun. And they just wanted to turn the buttons and see how things moved from one place to another.
Can I ask which museum this was?
Shenandoah Valley Children's Museum, Discovery Museum.
It's a great museum.
And yeah, it was amazing. You couldn't get them out of the lobby because they were so fascinated by this. So I have to ask, where did the impetus for your institute come from? And why celebrate Rube Goldberg?
Oh boy, that's a big question with probably too long an answer, but I'll try to make it brief. So Rube was my grandfather, and I grew up, his cartoons were all around and hanging on the walls, sort of shoved in corners, blah, blah, blah. And after he died, my father started in 1988 an organization to sort of kind of capture all of the good stuff that was going on around the IP, which was mostly the Rube Goldberg Machine Contest. And the family got involved and they started, helping, create the annual task, because a Rube Goldberg Machine Contest every year has one task that every machine in the competition has to complete. So over the years, we've had everything from recycle a can to pour a bowl of cereal to zip a zipper. And it was mostly a college level competition. In fact, it was only a college level competition. But, um, there's this acronym that sort of appeared on the horizon called STEM, followed by STEAM. And for those of you on this podcast, I think you probably all know what it is, but it's science, technology, engineering, and math. And then when you add the A in, it becomes STEAM. It includes art. And so Rube was doing STEM before that acronym ever existed.
Absolutely.
And anyway, when my father took over and created this, he, from 1988 till he died in 2007, he and some family members were sort of like playing with what to do with this. There were obviously inquiries to license his original cartoon work. For those of you also who don't know who Rube Goldberg was, he was a cartoonist. In his lifetime, he became an adjective. He became an adjective because his cartoons, the ones that became so popular, they were of these crazy contraptions that accomplished a very simple task in the most overly complicated and absurd way possible. So when you hear someone say, oh, it's a Rube Goldberg, it's sort of like a huge waste of time to accomplish something simple. So in these competitions, we were, as a family looking for machines and kids who were really kind of hearing that calling and doing these crazy contraptions that obviously accomplished the annual task. So when my dad died, it all fell into my lap. None of my cousins wanted to deal with it. To be frank, I didn't really want to either. I always say that I was grandfathered into this situation. I was originally a fashion designer. That's my métier for my lifetime until STEM and Rube kind of landed on my doorstep. So I spent about 7 years creating the Art of Rube Goldberg book. And it may seem sort of silly, but I would travel to the competitions just to see what was going on. And I was working on this book that my father had agreed to do, but that I became the heir apparent to complete. And I realized I need to educate myself. I need to figure out who was my grandfather other than Papa Rube, whose cartoons were all over our apartment.
Right.
So I started going to the competitions, and mostly that meant I was going to Purdue University where the competitions started. We can get back to that later, but um, and I went to where the archive is, which is at UCal Berkeley, where they have thousands of my grandfather's cartoons. That was my grandfather's alma mater, and I spent God, a week and a half really culling through the collection. And at the end of the day, I started I started dreaming of the possibilities and what I could imagine for Rube Goldberg in the digital age. And it was also at a time when it was the dawn of YouTube. And suddenly, OK Go had a video that became more than it was like more than viral. The fact that even today it's up to 75 million views.
Wow.
And if you want to see it, go to YouTube, type in OK Go Rube Goldberg, you will find it.
I will drop a
You
link
can
in the
also
show notes.
you could good. You can also go to our website and see a whole bunch of viral Rube Goldberg machines from advertisements like for Honda Cog or Beneful to kid builders who build these extraordinary machines. Audrey Clemens, who, God, he must be in college now, but when he was little, he built a monster trapping machine, and it too has millions of views. And then they've always been sort of scattered into pop culture through movies. Uh,
Right.
you've got Pee Wee Herman's, Big Adventure. You've got
Chitty
and
Chitty Bang Bang.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. You've also got, last night, I was watching Back to the Future, the whole opening. And apparently Rube's name was throughout, in every development meeting for that movie. They were talking about Rube. So the it's kind of everywhere, but how do we harness this to teach kids? And STEM sometimes can be dry, it can be, you know, stuff you learn behind a desk. Now, granted, you've got robotics and you get to the opportunity to build a robot. How cool is that? And get sort of into the automated world of coding, and which is so much about what the future holds. But before you're ready for coding, it's really important to teach kids how things work. And we're so there's such a long leap to understand uh, how A gets you to B and gets you to C when it comes to the contraptions and things we rely on. I mean, so here's my cell phone. I say, I'm sure there are Rube Goldberg machines happening in here. Connections be connections. Do I know how it works? No, but I'm hysterical when my phone stops working. So I think it's such a nostalgic thing to see how something right in front of your eyes actually works. And then if we can get the kids to engage and laugh, and maybe their parents are laughing with them, and maybe you're connecting kids that never would have found each other otherwise. The kid that's on the spectrum, the kid that's, the jock, the kid that's the artist. I mean, how are we connecting them in a social environment so that we can inspire teamwork and collaboration and improvisation when things fail? And to me, I see all of that in the work we do in STEM and art education. And then the last piece of this is, well, not the last, because there are many things we can talk about. But the last piece is, how do we level the playing field here? Because if you want to get a kid into robotics, if you don't have 10 grand in your coffers and mentors who can supply even more help, um, you can be brilliant, and the kid can be left on the sidelines. In our competitions, and I always say we are sort of I don't like to use this analogy, but I do say it. We're like the gateway drug into all the other,
I love it.
opportunities in STEM. You know, all you need is a pile of junk and a great imagination, and you can literally win top honors at our competitions. So it doesn't cost much of anything. Dumpster dive, raid the basement, raid the attic, use everyday objects to create the transfers of energy needed, wrap a narrative into it, get into costume. You've got 2 minutes to tell us the story of your machine. And the story of your machine is not the story of you necessarily. It is the story that you have created to tell the tale of why your machine or how your machine is putting toothpaste on a toothbrush. Or in this case, this year's competition, last year was put toothpaste on a toothbrush. This year it's feed a pet.
I
So
saw that. And the
feed a
deadline is
pet.
coming up, right? The deadline's in February, is that right?
The deadlines, it's all on our website. I don't commit any of it to memory. We have deadlines that come up in all of our different competitions, but we can talk about that when we sort of
Yes.
delineate how to get involved. But it's basically in March when the deadlines are. So there's plenty of time to put a team together, uh, you know, grab your friends, talk to your teachers, and see if, they want to help.
And I think that that's going to be such an important thing for any educators and family members listening. So you're going to want to go to the show notes because there's going to be links to the website, links to the competitions, links to all the videos. So don't worry about all of that. You have it right here at your fingertips. I want to circle back to something you said, Jennifer, that really resonates with me because I've spent so much of my career working with STEM and STEAM when we didn't even know that's what it was. I always viewed it as building connections and getting kids intrigued. And one of the things that I think the Rube Goldberg competitions and the things that you do at the Institute really help do is you're focused on those important skills that we need to be shifting to in education because they're what drives the future. You're looking at collaboration, at connection, at critical thinking, creative problem solving, and not relying on AI or computers or technology to do it, but really relying on human ingenuity. And I'm wondering, based on all of that, do you have examples of entries or things that you've seen kids do that sort of, I guess, live up to that, that show the essence of what
Oh
you
my God. Literally every year. And I remember I took over Rube if it was 2007, that's a long time ago. And I will say since then, we have competitions from elementary school straight through college. So, you can find your division and the rules obviously change according to the
of
age of the
course.
kids. But when you talk about, examples, so here's one example, and there are many that I can cite, but there was a team from St. Louis, Washington University, one of the early competitions. It was a college level competition, and it was a team that was a bunch of girls, and I think it was all girls, and they left a third of their machine on the side of the road when they drove away. And so there they are. They arrive at nationals, which, are the finals, and they are missing a good chunk of their machine. So they worked all night, all day, and they had to be ready by 10 a.m. the next morning. I think they got there in the afternoon the day before. They not only recreated the back end of their machine that they left, but they won.
Wow.
And I say won, I think they won first place that year. So that is in industry. Like, how did they do that? So where there's a will, there's a way. We have seen in the past, and now there are ways not just to compete live, but to film your machine and send it in. So we have an online competition, as well as the live regionals that feed into the live world championships at this point, because we've got entries from pretty much all around the world. When you go onto the website, you can see the laurels where we're represented internationally. Um, so there was one of the online submissions, I think a couple years ago. The task for that year was open a book. And there were two teachers, they're in Pennsylvania, two teachers. They both taught STEM and science. Uh, and their schools were like a mile apart, smaller schools. And it was sort of just a country road that connected them, where you get from one to the other. And they started the machine in one classroom, and I don't know, at the end of that machine, a ball tipped into this boy's hat, and he was on a bicycle, and he drove the bicycle to the other classroom, tipped his head, and the ball fell out of his hat, and it completed the machine in that classroom.
How amazing. What
It
a
was
cool sense of
astonishing.
collaboration.
I know it was incredible. And the period where he was bicycling, they sped up. So it was very fast and very kinetic. And it was one of the best machines we've ever set. I mean, everyone on the team at Rube was just gobsmacked. And then we have a bunch of judges that help us with these decisions from all walks of life, but they're all sort of central to the Rubiverse, as I like to call it.
I love it.
Whether it's publishers, actors, directors, ad agency people, teachers. We get a whole pool of folks to judge, and all of them were just, that's it. How do you say no to that machine?
Oh, that's incredible. And that's you're getting to that amazing creativity when you think about what went into coming up with that idea. How many times did they have to fail before they succeeded? We don't
Many.
necessarily see all the failures, but we need to learn to fail forward. And this is such a low stakes way to learn those skills and to learn that resilience that we need. I love this.
Well, the funny thing is, if you look at the OK Go video, again, 75 million views and counting. It wasn't until their 87th try that they actually did a complete run without something going wrong at one of the steps. So, and I'm sure this is true for you. I mean, if you're always winning and always successful, where do you learn?
Right.
You need to, if you don't have failures along the way, how do you improve? How do you get better? So, and Rube Goldberg machines, there's a lot of failures before there's a success. So it's perseverance and the tactile kind of project-based learning part of this is so important, because even though we have wonderful, amazing digital contests, and I can talk about those later, I think it's so important to, at some point, because it's inevitable, every kid wants to be in front of a screen, but sometimes you have to pry them away and say, okay, we're going to build this. And the kids are suddenly talking to each other in person. It's really big.
It's magical. And you've made it even easier for an educator, because I remember when I was doing summer camps at the Discovery Museum, one of the things we would do is we would bring out the random assorted junk, and we were playing with cause and effect. We were playing with push and pull. We were playing with kinetic and potential energy, Newton's 3 laws. And we would have them build contraptions to get a ball from one place to another. And my favorites were the ones that did not do it completely systematically. They added the spins and the wheels, and they were sort of pre-Rube Goldberg inventors, but they were thinking about, how do I make this cool? And you've got this series of books that have come out since I was doing that, the Rube Goldberg books. And as you and I were talking just now, I learned something that I think all of our educators need to learn, which is that there's curriculum that goes with them. So can you talk about the Rube Goldberg books for kids and sort of what special gifts there are waiting for us?
Well, the funny thing is, so the first book, which you have behind you, thankfully on your shelf up there, thank you. It's a picture book. It's 15 contraptions that take little Rube, the character we created, through his school day. So how he wakes up in the morning, how he gets dressed, how he makes breakfast, all the way to the end where how he turns off the light to go back to bed. So, and they're done in the style of my grandfather, but modernized. The my grandfather's cartoons, because he was trained as an engineer, but he really was an artist. But his mechanical mind would, present itself on every page, pretty much. And they were done in the form of patent applications. So he really took them seriously. These were real inventions. And that was part of the silliness of it. So we tried to do a similar thing with these new picture books. But in addition to the picture books, there's curriculum and activity guides, lesson plans that attach to each of the two picture books that we have. You have the first one, which is Rube Goldberg's Simple, Normal, Humdrum School Day, which is definitely not very humdrum, the way he goes about it. And then the second one is called Rube Goldberg's Simple, Normal, Definitely Different Day Off. And it's funny, we were working on that book during COVID, before COVID, and it was supposed to be Rube Goldberg's sick day off. We
Oh,
thought tonally, kids have had a year-long sick day off. I think we better, but the book was pretty much done, so we had to kind of recalibrate it. And it's funny, there's one of the inventions in that book is about how to pretend to be sick so you can
very,
have a
very
day off.
cool.
So anyway, so that was a little funny, but we have activity and lesson plan guides for each, and they're free and they're downloadable on our website. But there's also another thing that we have in our quiver of education tools is there are these paper engineer kits, and they're templates. All you need is a printer and some printer paper and like a penny and a paper clip. I mean, things that you would definitely have
Right.
around. There's a machine to flip a coin, a machine to make a cup of tea, and there's another machine that's a snack hat. And it's a hat that administers popcorn. And you'll see in the Definitely Different Day Off, there's one invention where little Rube is at the movies and he's wearing his snack hat. So we like to think there's a through line there from the book to an actual tactile way to make the snack hat.
Oh, that's so fun. And you were giving me an example when we were talking before we came on of a family that took it to an extreme for Halloween. Can you describe the video you just got?
We just got this on Friday, and I mean, it made my day and everyone else at the Institute. We all were just dying over this. This little kid, we got an email, which we do often, into the Institute with people with showing us their machines and what they're doing and Rube and questions. And this one was a mother of a little boy in San Francisco, and the little boy loves Rube. And he decided he wanted to be Rube Goldberg for Halloween, meaning the little Rube Goldberg. And I think it must have been his mother or father, or I'm sure he had a say in it, but they put him in this contraption. He looked like the little boy, little Rube in the books, and because he loves those, and he's wearing his costume that is a box of some sort that has tubing. And when people gave him candy, they had to put it into the tubing, and it went around and did all these things. Then it eventually fell into his bucket of candy. So I don't know if we're going to be allowed to post it, but it did make us very, very happy.
Oh, I love that creativity. So I want to get into the digital assets in a minute and sort of really focus in on the competitions. But before we do that, one of the things I like to do is to get to know the people on our show. And you, Jennifer, have such a cool adventure and learning to share on your own. So I know that you sort of got rubed into
I did.
doing all of this. But before that, describe your adventures in learning because you had a whole world and a whole career that kind of led you into this world. Can you tell us a little
By
bit about
total
you?
accident and happenstance. Um, okay, so where do I begin? I was a fashion designer. That was my trade. I also did jewelry. I, some people, the label was called Jennifer George. You can go to like vintage shows now and you can actually find them. Or if you want to see what I do now in the way of, you know, clothing and jewelry, and mostly it's really scarves and the jewelry I do. And I sort of kind of tangentially like my grandfather and how he saw the world. I will take the elements of your jewelry box, the lost earring, your grandfather's cufflinks, the beads of your mother's, da, da, da. And people send me all the stuff that's sentimental that they're definitely not wearing. And I make mostly necklaces out of them. So they're really composite pieces out of, I want to say, everyday objects, not dissimilar to my grandfather.
Right.
They're not meant to be particularly humorous. They're meant to be beautiful. I did one which was really fun for the only female founding member of Burning Man because they give tokens to the people that are involved in Burning Man. And so I had like 20 years of these talismans to manage. It's much more a costume piece than a wearable piece because it's huge. It's like a breastplate, and I had to balance it with chains
Right.
in the back. But it ended up being in the Burning Man exhibit that was at the Smithsonian.
Oh, cool.
And that, so and my grandfather, the last exhibit in his lifetime was at the Smithsonian. So it did feel very much like, oh, there is this funny connection between us, other than what's obvious. And in my sort of fashion career, I did clothing for, incredible women of all shapes and sizes. Um, Oprah Winfrey had some of my stuff. Bonnie Raitt wore my stuff. Um, and I had the honor to create the inaugural attire for Tipper Gore in the last election. And that, it's my understanding that her sort of opera coat, which I loved, and the dress are in the Smithsonian, and the interior of the opera coat had embroidery with all of the states in the United States embroidered. It was black lining. They were embroidered in red with gold stars in between, and
Oh,
personal stuff to, excuse me, to her and Al. So it was really a wonderful, wonderful thing to do.
oh, that is beautiful. And I love the fact that you've brought sort of that creative energy and that creative thought process into what you're doing now. I mean, it's very clear in the way that the Institute is set up that there's this pulse of creativity and art in everything that you all are doing. And now I sort of have a better sense of where that comes from. Um, Also, just kind of on a personal note, what do you remember about your grandfather? How old were you when he passed? What kind of relationship did you have with him?
Well, there were six grandchildren, and I was the second youngest. Uh, I have very vivid memories of him because my parents went out a lot and would leave me with my grandparents. Um, and I talk about this in the essay, and there's the big grown-up book, which is called The Art of Rube Goldberg. That's the one that I talked about at the beginning. It took 7 years of homework to put together.
Right.
And there's sort of an essay about, my memories of my grandfather. And he taught me how to draw, and which is something I used in my career a lot. He taught me how to shake hands. And whenever I do a Zoom in a classroom with little kids, even bigger kids, I'll say, okay, I want you to introduce, I say, if you remember nothing else about Rube Goldberg, remember this. And I teach them how to shake hands properly because I think it actually means something. And he taught me, he said, have a firm, hard handshake, look someone in the eye, and let them know that they're meeting someone. because at first you never have a second chance to make a first impression, right?
Right.
So, and all the kids start shaking hands and say, nice to meet you. It's very fun. But that was something very important to my grandfather. And the other thing, and I'm going to again make this short, he taught me how to make paper balloons, um, which I just loved. We would sit there and make paper balloons for an entire afternoon. He tried to teach me croquet, which I was not very good at. Um, and he liked to be the center of attention. I mean, I think he'd be very happy that he was still in the lexicon and that he was kind of, in a weird way, more relevant today than when he died. He's gone from being an adjective to a verb. And now the question is, do you, Rube? And the answer, very often in classrooms all across the country today, the answer is yes.
Oh, I love that. So let's transition from do you Rube to how do we Rube? So,
Very good question. So there are many ways to Rube, and all of it is on our website, which is rubegoldberg.org. And we actually just lost. We had rubegoldberg.com, and I'm going to commiserate with anyone out there that this has happened to. So I don't know. It was like an accident of communication. We lost rubegoldberg.com. Now some Taiwanese entity owns rubegoldberg.com. We've tried to talk to them, but they won't even return an email. So if any of you out there are listening and have a solution because you have been through this before, please let us know how to handle this. But anyway, we're rubegoldberg.org, which makes sense. And we have a whole section on contests. And what's very cool is we don't just stick to the classic OG Rube Goldberg machine contest. This fall, we have the playground challenge, which is if you have kids that love to draw and imagine and kind of come up with crazy ways to interact with the world. This is the contest for them, and it's open through December 17th, so there's still plenty of time. Um, Please show us your ideas of what you think the coolest Rube Goldberg playground or component of a Rube Goldberg playground would be. This competition started, at least the idea of it started during COVID. Remember, we talked about, certain good things came out of
yeah,
COVID. So, teachers and parents, everyone was faced with how do we teach kids while we're all in lockdown? And how do we bring education outside? And the idea of like, oh my God, wouldn't it be amazing to let kids become part of the machines they're studying? And simple machines is obviously something that teachers, all across the country are trying to,
absolutely.
teach kids. So that's where the idea of, oh, well, let's design a Rube Goldberg playground, but let's start it as a competition. That's what we do. So Miracle Recreation, in partnership with the Institute, has we came up with the challenge. And there's ways in which you can enter. It's really pretty simple. It's almost like putting together a PowerPoint presentation of your ideas. And then we're going to pick a couple of the winning students from each division. Again, when I say a couple, I don't know, like we're going to get all the submissions. We're going to see what comes in. And are they individuals who are submitting or teams? But from that pool, there's going to be at least one winner from each division, and the winners are going to come to, and when I say each division, 17 and under, 18 and over. And we have professionals that are sending in
Oh, wow.
ideas. So it's not just for kids. Um, and we're going to have a sort of design charrette at the Miracle Recreation offices. So the winners can learn from the professional builders. And
How
out of that
cool.
session, we're going to come up with the Rube Goldberg playground. And then we're going to have the next phase of the competition. We're going to take applications and we're going to give one of these brand new Rube Goldberg playgrounds to whoever's the most compelling applicant. And again, we haven't really we haven't gotten to phase 2 yet. And then phase 3, of course, is breaking ground and building the
That
playground.
sounds amazing. And what a cool way to take that idea of kid engineered all the way to fruition and to be able to show that what you do matters.
Absolutely. And we're going to have curriculum embedded into the playground. So through barcodes, you can so parents, anybody can hold their phone up to a particular stanchion and learn about it. And then there will be from the playground, there's also going to be curriculum that goes back with teachers into the classroom as they study simple machines and move forward in that part of their curriculum.
That sounds amazing. So we're coming towards the end of our conversation, and I'm wondering,
There
we've
are a
kind of,
couple more competitions I want
yes,
to talk about. We've got the Unreal Engine competition, which is a digital animation competition. So you can you can animate a Rube Goldberg machine. And if you have ever seen Sing, I mean, or Wallace and Gromit, there are incredible
yes.
machines that are animated. So there's something called the Unreal Engine Learning Kit. It is an incredible tool and it's free to kids. We are partnering with Intel and Avid to do this. And there are amazing prizes there that they're supplying, which is we're so excited about. So again, at rubegoldberg.org, you can find out all about that as well. There's a Minecraft competition for next year. And again, we try to meet kids and teachers and parents where kids want to live, in their specialized area of interest. So we are not just talking to the tactile builder kids, we're talking to really pretty much everyone in a classroom.
And then we've got the pet competition too.
Well, that's the real one. When I say real, they're all real, but that's the OG. That's the Rube Goldberg Machine Contest, where in real life, you're going to build a machine that feeds your pet. And now also I'm going to put another wrench in that. If you want to digitally animate, that's also the competition there too. So you're going to have to build a machine. Like if, I don't know, Steven Spielberg came to you and said, we need a machine in our next animated movie that builds a pet. You would have that same conundrum too. You'd have to figure out how to do it and make it Rube.
Oh, very cool. So I love sort of all of the different ways that this conversation has flowed and added in new ideas, and so much of what you do just, I think, is powerful education.
I have one more thing.
Yes,
Okay.
let's add one more
If I
thing.
don't mention it, tomorrow our book comes out, which is our newest book. It's called Rube Goldberg's Big Book of Building. And it is 25 contraptions that you can build at home. And it's really the manual. It is the roadmap. It's the guide to building Rube Goldberg machines. My co-writer, Zach Umperovich, is our national contest director, and he is the one who created all these machines. Please, please, you will love it if you have kids that like this sort of stuff. There is simple 3-step machines, and then it goes all the way up to more advanced, complicated machines. And it's really everyday objects that you have at home. And then
It sounds like a perfect holiday gift.
it is an incredible under the tree gift, and it's a really great thing to have in a classroom. I promise they'll be fighting over who gets to take the book home to
So this
read.
sounds like something you want to get for the teacher in your life as well.
Absolutely.
I love that. So, Jennifer, before we close, I kind of want to circle back to you've had a chance to see things all over the country, all over the world, really. What brings you hope these days?
Literally going to our competitions. I know it sounds cheesy and corny, but inevitably, when I get to one of our live contests, and I'm wandering around and I'm seeing these kids and they're working and they're problem solving in real time and they're getting it together, and you see the immense creativity and out of the box thinking required to actually even just to get to a competition, let alone to nationals or world championships as they're called now. um, it gives me hope. these are kids who are they're getting along. They're problem solving in real time. It's a metaphor for how the world needs to come together, especially now.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We have been talking to Jennifer George, and if you want to learn more about the Rube Goldberg Institute, I'm going to drop all of the links in the show notes, and go out and start inventing. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's just so much fun getting to see everyone come together, and I mean, we're working hard. I bet everyone else is too. I can't wait to see what they build.